Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Ladies Meeting podcast. We are a group of women that meet downtown Vancouver live, and we also meet online. So you can find us at theladiesmeeting.com. And today we're doing the second part of a two-part series with Kathleen Lane, talking about what makes organizations great and the 6 core psychological needs. She spent a great deal of time last week talking about connection and how important that was when working in an organization. And one of the pieces that I noticed, for example, in her paper that she wrote is 85% of employees are either not engaged or 65% are actively disengaged at work. So these are really interesting statistics, and she's digging into them. And welcome, Kathleen.
So thanks, Anyssa. So last week we talked a little bit about how social connections are important both for our human well-being and for our engagement in the workplace, and then the effectiveness and productivity of the workplace itself. As you noted, 85% of employees in the world are either not engaged or actively disengaged at work for all sorts of different reasons. One of them is they just don't feel connected with the people there. Another one, and the one we're going to focus on today, is people don't necessarily feel a sense of purpose in their work. As humans, we crave purpose. I think it's one of the things that really sets humans apart from other species. And as more and more researchers are looking at this, we're discovering that if we don't have a sense of purpose, we have different levels of psychological distress. We even live longer if we have a sense of purpose. So really cool findings on that front.
And I think it's really interesting because I find as well that people are even willing to, from an employer's point of view, people are willing to work harder and for less money if they feel that it has some sort of altruistic purpose to it, or that they feel that at some point there's going to be a greater good that comes out of what they're doing, because we all want to be included in, not all of us, but most people want to be included in making a better community.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the big draws towards the nonprofit sector for many people, is they want to see the impact that their work has on the community, and they want to do something bigger than themselves. Mm-hmm. So in the management world, like, there's so many researchers who are looking at this now. Simon Sinek's It Starts With Why mm-hmm. is a really well-known one. There's a book called The Purpose Effect. There's other books on purpose and meaning at work. Like, the list just goes on. I think I got hundreds of hits when I Googled it in Amazon the other day.
Well, and I know I've worked for a company where we actually did entire weekends on helping people find their why and doing dream boards and vision boards and figuring out how they could apply their why into their business, or what quite often they discovered that their businesses were a production of what they didn't know was their why. So for example, one of the best examples was this woman who had grown up in a super busy family, and she ran a spa, which was super quiet. She made sure it was always ambient and calm for people. And that was her purpose, was to create a quiet and calm environment that she didn't have. So I think sometimes our why comes out even if we don't want it to or know that it has.
Yeah, that's a really cool one. Other examples, it's like Patagonia. He started a company to build outdoor goods, and he wanted to make sure that the actions of the company didn't harm the environment any more than they absolutely had to, and that ideally that they're creating a better environment. So that's one of Patagonia's biggest drivers in all their huge corporate sustainability things. And I think the idea of creating a better world, I think that's one of the major drivers on why more and more companies are adopting really strong CSR programs. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also one of
what's a CSR?
Oh, CSR, corporate social responsibility.
There we go. That's a great acronym, but we always have ones that we don't know what they are.
Absolutely. It's so easy to get lost in the technical jargon when you've been reading the same acronyms over and over again for months and years.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it must be such a challenge. And for a lot of companies, they have to get to a certain level of success to balance out the financial and with that purpose, so that they can survive and get to that next level, so that they can grow their staff and their teams to to be successful, because like the financial part of producing, for example, something that is environmentally friendly and matches and comes into an alignment with their purpose can be a huge challenge.
It can be, but it also can be an opportunity to look at ways that maybe you can reduce waste or reduce the inputs you need.
Mm-hmm.
So the financial questions, it's quite up in the air, although when you start digging into some of the studies, and to be honest, I don't know how they all pull their numbers because they all come up with different results.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are showing, and these are looking at larger companies now, that they tend to be more profitable
Mm-hmm.
than the competition. But it could be how they've niched themselves. It could be how they've priced themselves. It could be how they're operating and sourcing. There's so many different things that go in there. So I don't think it's a purpose or profits question. I think they can both be there, but it's choosing how you're going to go in search of that purpose or that social good, and doing it in the way it makes sense for your company and the products and services you're creating.
So other than Patagonia, have you looked at other companies that have, again, this is similar to the question that I asked you last week, was questions that companies that have midstream all of a sudden either changed their purpose or found a divine intervention with their staff because they realized that they all had similar core values and were going to drive them forward, and seen a success from that?
So most of the companies I've interviewed who are more purpose driven, they tend to start their company with that in mind. Like the company is an extension of their own personal purpose and values.
So are they quite often people that come out of a company where they're dissatisfied then, and that they don't feel like their purpose is being answered?
That can be the case. They can also just be, there's a lot of young people who are just choosing an entrepreneurial path as opposed to going into a corporate path, whether it's for flexibility or because they just believe in whatever their cause is and want to figure out how to earn a living while they're achieving their goals.
Well, I think we're kind of into something new on the west coast of Canada, where we have people who are between 30 and 40 who are actually inheriting wealth for the first time, because we are such a new country. Yes. On the East Coast, you probably see more people either inheriting companies or coming into money so that they can. The town that I come from, you see a lot of people in their even 20s and 30s who are inheriting family farms, but now they've had the time to go to university and attach their passion and create profit with it, because they're either rebuilding a family business in a more purpose-driven way, and there's a lot of money behind it already, so they have the time to develop where they want to go with it in almost very Pinteresty way. It's kind of strange. Some of these small boutique businesses are starting up with this huge sense of purpose, but they've also got huge financial backing as well.
Always lovely to be in that situation, isn't it?
I don't know what that's like personally, but it is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I can't say from a. But to go back to your initial question, companies that have pivoted, Unilever, I think, is a really good example of that one. For years, it just existed as the typical corporate paradigm: sell products, maximize profit. And when Paul Pullman took over as CEO, it's really shifted towards focusing on creating a better world. So they have talked about, they haven't done it yet, but they've talked about becoming a B corporation, which is a very rigorous testing to make sure that your governance is solid, that you're treating your employees fairly throughout your entire supply chain, that you have strong environmental practices. If they do it, it would be huge. They would be definitely the world's largest company to go that route.
But I would say, again, it's because they've got that financial clout and income.
They do.
That they'd be able to swap, because that goes to, you could be literally upping your paper costs in a company like that by 20 to 30%, because they've got to go completely to get that designation. It's very rigorous, right down to the paper you order and who your suppliers are. So that is an amazing thing, because at one point they were really harmful.
Yes.
To the world. Let's just, soap.
Like many consumer goods companies. Yeah.
They were just everywhere and taking over in many different countries. So I think that's a great example, and it makes you kind of want to buy that product a bit more as well.
For sure. You know, like I don't honestly very often look because I know which brands I'm going for, but like if I'm considering a new product, I would consider looking on the back. Is it a Unilever or is it a Procter and Gamble one? And go for that Unilever one.
Interesting, hey? And do you think that that's gonna, speaking of levers and levers, that's gonna push that other company to make those changes as well? So they're really taking on a bigger leadership role.
Absolutely. Once the large companies jump on, it's going to push the rest of the competition.
And especially because they're in such a plasticky world too. Like I know in my personal life, I'm really eliminating. I'm starting to make a lot of things on my own because I don't want to have the containers, and that's my purpose in my life is I want to leave the world a little better for my grandson, and so that means being more attentive to what I purchase, or not creating the opportunity to not purchase it at all and just create it at home. And so I think the companies are reacting to people who are doing things like that.
For sure. And I think that's why the companies that took the early lead are doing so well. There's more and more consumers who are thinking like you do, like I do.
Well, I was talking with someone who was like, we need to change what people are buying, and like we're talking cracker boxes in particular. And I said, well, no, actually we need to look at people before they even get to the store. What can we do to help them buy more core products, or make it easier for them to do things at home where they never take the packaging home? And that's, that's just one conversation about the environmental movement. But that plays out. I see that at our office. I see it everywhere, where people are really considering what they purchase more than ever. So when they see the companies that are purpose driven, and people want to work for a company that is making a change in the world. I don't want to work, like, for example, I work for a company where we've got new CNG buses, which, the environmental impact on that is taking a lot of gas a lot of gas off the road. And so that makes me.
Anyssa, sorry, what is CNG?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. There you go. See, that's my acronym: compressed natural gas. So we've just brought on a fleet of 25 buses with compressed natural gas, taken off a fleet of diesel. So the environmental impact is just great, and we get a lot of questions about it, and we've done a lot of press releases on it, and it makes me feel good to work there.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, it's not electric. We're coming to that. We do have lines of business that have electric, but it just makes me feel good that I work for a company that is, it's in their conversation to work, do better.
And just getting people on buses is making things better too.
Yes, it's actually
fewer single-use cars.
Well, in the town that I'm in, in the town that I'm in, we actually, someone said we're up 40,000 riders, and I was thinking for the season, and that was for 1 month, up 40,000.
Oh, wow.
1 year,
That's
40,000 swipes.
That's huge.
Yeah, we didn't know we were making that much of a difference, but it's massive.
And you're totally not alone in being more, you have more pride in working for that company. You want to work there. We talked at the beginning about 85% of employees around the world are disengaged to at least some degree. In the US, it's a little better. It's about 70% who are disengaged, 30% who are engaged. But in purpose-driven companies, employee engagement is 73%. So that's a huge difference in the number of people who want to be at work and who show up and are motivated and working hard while they're there.
Well, and I think it's also, for example, those sick days that really cost an employer a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money quite often already on a health plan for their staff. And then, I see this, the people that aren't really engaged and don't see the purpose in the business often are those, and I live in a town where, if there's a powder day, people are out of here. Will you work on a powder day? Yes, you're hired. Like, are you sick or have the flu? Right.
Yeah.
So, but there's those people that know that they're creating something bigger than themselves. They're going to show up if they're like dying pretty much.
Well, hopefully actually they'll work from home on that day and keep the germs at home. It's just my personal one. But
well, and creating those there, right? Where you can work at home, and that's part of the challenge too. Or
when there's something big coming up, like those are the people who will put in the extra effort to make sure it's done and done well on time, and even if it means staying late 1 or 2 nights.
Absolutely. So where do you see this going in the next, say, 10 years as far as employment engagement?
So we talked about purpose driving both consumer decisions. People want to purchase from companies that have a strong purpose. Employees want to work at those companies. And one thing we haven't talked about yet is investors are beginning to focus on investing in those companies.
Mm-hmm.
So back in January, Larry Fink, he's the CEO of BlackRock, and BlackRock is the world's largest asset management company.
Mm-hmm.
So he wrote a letter to CEOs around the world. I might be phrasing it a little strongly, but putting them on notice that their business needs a purpose beyond just profits. And so they're doing it because their clients want them to be investing in that type of company. But it's also because purpose-driven companies, or companies with just strong responsibility, social responsibility, environmental responsibility, are less risk. And as an investor, you don't want your assets at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing consumers, employees, and investors demanding that companies have a higher purpose.
Well, I think with the internet, it's much more difficult to have anything other than full transparency too with these companies. So the average investor can investigate a company much more deeply than they could before, which is probably one of the big differences as well.
And we have higher standards in reporting. People see through greenwashing. They see through those green marketing messages that don't mean anything. People are pretty tired of, giving a little bit of your proceeds to some environmental charity while you're polluting out the other end. So there's a lot more interest in how do you actually clean up your operations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think from any company's point of view, that's the direction.
Is there a percentage rate yet as to what companies are going to be B corporations? Like, is there a huge flow? Because it is a pretty rigorous process. I'd be curious to see over the next 10 years how many people go to that, or does the B corporation just become a standard and therefore that it becomes
I'm really curious on that one too. I suspect that we'll see, that trickle of companies who are going to B Corp. We'll see more and more companies going that route. They tend to be doing quite well. So there's that financial reason, for your investors, for your shareholders, hey, companies that are B Corps are performing well, let's do that.
Yeah.
And then because it's third-party accreditation, it's that extra checkpoint for the consumer. Hey, yeah, I know this company put in the work. It's not just some marketing story. But I think we're also going to see.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the regular, just all companies kind of have to start lifting to a higher level, even if they don't quite make it all the way up to B Corp level.
Yeah, I think it's going to become the norm because there's less acceptance of anything but that in certain communities, certain age groups, and it's changing.
Yeah, and especially it's the age groups, communities, demographics that have money to invest are the ones who care about it. Well, they can afford to care about it the most.
Mm-hmm.
It's about survival. It's about thriving at that point. And they're the investors. So they're the ones who are going to start driving that kind of change as well.
Well, and it's almost, because this is all online as well, it's almost a gamification of this way of changing a business, because people are pointing, clicking, and choosing, which when they're investing now. So it's really a gamification of how you run your corporate business, because people are just going to click somebody else, because as that big company might be a big investor, but they're getting data from surveys from people clicking, and it's really a full gamification of this change, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, I really like that. So next time we're going to talk about confidence. Why we all want to look and feel like we know what we are doing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Can you give us a teaser for our week?
About competence. As human beings, we want to know what we're doing. We want to look like we know what we're doing. We get respect and recognition when we know what we're doing. And that's just one of those things that drives us.
I can't wait to talk about that one. I know I see it in my job as well. So If you did not get a chance to listen to week 1 on connection on the 6 core psychological needs with Kathleen Lane, please, you'll be able to see a link to it on our YouTube page. And if you also click subscribe and the little bell below the video somewhere, you will be able to find out when we do week 3 competence. And we'll be going right up to number 6, which is rest. So the 6 pieces are connection, purpose, competence, autonomy, growth, and rest. And we're going to cover those over our 6 interviews with Kathleen. And you can find her at kathleenlane.ca. So
Awesome.
we will see you next week. Thank you so much for your time. And I
Thank you,
look forward to
Anyssa.
talking again. So you can find us online at theladiesmeeting.com. If you want to see us in person, we are on the last Tuesday of each month at the Sylvia Hotel. And there's a group of women there working on personal leadership, growing our networks, and building really strong friendships. And I look forward to seeing you there.